Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Old Biker Dude Show, Home Edition, where we make recipes right here in the kitchen and cut you in on some of my secret recipes like today. And what we're going to be making today is red bean seafood gumbo. And what I mean by red bean seafood gumbo is we're going to be liquefying a pound of red beans to incorporate into the roux to use as the base for the gumbo. Come on, this is going to be fun. Now, of course, making gumbo requires a lot of prep, and as soon as the steam gets off the camera lens, I'll show you what I'm doing here. Basically, I get started by taking about 6 stalks of celery, and I'm just basically kind of stir frying them down until they're really soft, because this celery is going to end up essentially almost liquefied in my gumbo base. And then after this, I'm going to, one at a time, depending on the density of the vegetable, I'll be doing some red bell pepper, onion, mushrooms, and carrots to add into the base also. Now over here, I'll move the camera, I'm just cooking my red beans. They're actually Goya pink beans, and I'm going to cook those until they're basically just like ready to eat, except when I'm done, I'm going to liquefy them in the blender to add to the base of my gumbo. And then now I'm just going to add some red bell peppers into my little prep pan here and let them kind of cook around for a minute. And shortly I'll add onions and mushrooms also. Now I'm adding about a large onion here. Now, of course, there are those that say that mushrooms have no place in gumbo, but in my gumbo they do. I like mushrooms in just about anything, from soups. I even put them in chicken and dumplings. Mushrooms soak up flavor, and I just like having them in these things. Those will cook down to be very small, actually, and take up very little space in the finished product. And now I'm going to toss a little chunk of butter and some 100% pure avocado oil in here to fry these around in. And I'm going to pop in a pretty healthy teaspoon size hunk of minced garlic. And then I'm going to take about a cup of low sodium vegetable broth, organic vegetable broth, and put it in here. And this is basically just going to act to steam all my vegetables to get them nice and soft. There goes my top. I'm going to leave those on there and probably boil them for, several minutes until I know everything's getting soft. Now over here, I have my catch pot. And this is going to be where I start accumulating all the ingredients for my gumbo. And once I've got everything done and in here, the last thing I'll do is actually start to prepare my roux that will end up as the base when mixed with the red bean concentrate or puree. And then, of course, you're probably wondering, what kind of seafood are you going to be putting in there, old biker dude? And the answer to that would be I'm going to be putting a pretty nice size shrimp, wild-caught shrimp, and scallops, which are also that way, and some smoked sausage, and that will make all the meats for my gumbo. Now, the way I initially did my red beans or pink beans is this morning I brought them to a boil. 1 pound of Goya pink beans to a boil in about 6 cups of water, and then I left the top on and let them sit there and absorb the liquid for about 2 hours. And then, of course, added enough liquid to cover the beans, which I just did again. And I'm going to bring them back to a slow simmer until I know the beans are nice and soft. And then at that point, I'm going to use the blender to puree them and bring them down to an almost liquid form. In the meantime, I'm going to stage about a little more than 1/3 of a cup of flour in my pot back here for when I get ready to make my roux. And I'm also going to add around 1/6 of a cup or so of almond oil. And while I'm nowhere near ready to actually start making my roux yet, see, there's my flour and butter and oil in there. I'm going to turn this on real low to just basically melt my butter and let it just kind of incorporate with that flour. And then here, when I get ready, I'll do the actual mixing where you have to, that's pretty labor intensive because you have to stand and stir the roux constantly in order to have it properly incorporate its parts together. Now, of course, you'll see the beautiful color that the liquid here in the vegetables is starting to take on. They're getting soft and translucent. And as you can see, the mushrooms have shrunk down considerably and just became their equal part of all this. But the color is just beautiful right now. The onion and the red bell pepper and green from the celery is all combining to make a really beautiful color. And that's going to mix into the color of the base of my roux also. I depend on these vegetables to be a very important part of the gumbo itself. So we're going to slide the top back on these vegetables and continue to boil them in that bit of chicken broth and until they're almost completely liquefied. And then oftentimes I will take my little potato masher and help the vegetables along by just kind of mashing them out like when I make chicken and dumplings. And more or less all I'm looking to do is just create smaller pieces that don't take up as much room in the roux, because I want the focus to be mostly on my seafood ingredients, but naturally I want the taste and the vegetables to be incorporated in the background. But all I'm doing here is just kind of helping break them down and getting more of the liquid out of them so they become a little bit more, or a little bit easier to liquefy during the cooking process. Okay, my vegetables have become exactly what I want them to be. Nice and soft and kind of squishy. There'll be some wonderful looking ingredients in the gumbo, and they've let out just enough of the liquid that's going to incorporate well into the roux, both for color and for consistency.
Are you making gumbo?
Now, for those of y'all that know how to make gumbo, you're probably wondering why I didn't make more ingredients in my pot for the base of the roux. I'm going to do a little switch here and put my pot over here where you can see everything. You'll see it's sort of taking on a sort of a little pasty look down there. That's the flour is going to sort of brown real slowly as we begin the roux. But the reason I didn't do more is because I'm going to have a lot of it from my beans, and so I made about literally 1/4 of what I usually would as far as the roux for this size of a pot. But the beans are going to make up a huge part of that, and I'm going to also add more roux later. You'll see what I'm talking about here shortly. Now here I'm going to add another handful of all-purpose flour, and I'm going to add another 1/2 stick of butter. And then now all I'm going to do is just basically maintain a constant stirring while it heats very slowly and keep the flour from clumping up. I don't want it to boil. I just want the roux to sort of start a browning process. And then if you watch carefully, it seems like it takes forever when you're doing it, but if you watch carefully, the liquid starts to get a little darker and a little darker over time. I put this on sort of low heat because I'm not really in a hurry right now. I'm still waiting on my red beans to finish. So basically I'm just going to stand here and stir this for as long as it takes. Adding in my broth. And basically we're just going to color our roux now by continually stirring it up like this. And it'll just get a little browner and a little browner as we go. And my beans are getting just about where they're almost ready. I'm going to take my 2 bay leaves out that were cooking in my beans and pop those in the vegetables that are waiting over there in the corner. Now all we have to do is stir and stir and stir and stir until this gets browner. But the consistency of my roux is going very well so far. It might be a tad on the thin side, but as it continues to heat here, it's going to get a little thicker. The good news is my beans have reached the consistency I'm wanting over here. So I'm just going to turn them off, let them cool just a little bit, and they'll be ready to puree in the blender. As a matter of fact, I'm going to set them back here in my little staging area and get out another frying pan, put a little bit of oil in it, and that's what I'm going to heat up my sausage in. And then of course I'm going to stir the roux and stir the roux and stir the roux. And then of course, as I mentioned, see as it's starting to thicken here again, the thing is never to let it boil because that's going to scorch your flour and it just will make your gumbo just taste awful. But here we are getting a very slight browning effect. It just takes time. Making the roux properly is just something that will really test your patience. I've got it just about to the color I want. And as you can see, you'll see it's thickened up a great deal. That's just about a perfect consistency based on the fact that I'm going to add the pureed beans to it. So things are looking good right now. Now I've turned my heat off and I added one more container of low sodium vegetable broth. So I did thin it down just a little bit more. But everything seemed to have incorporated well in the roux. So I'd say it's ready for the bean puree. I'm just letting them cool down a little bit so I can work with them. And we'll move on to the next phase here. And just I'm going to add a little paprika to start coloring my roux up a little bit. That's going to mix with this red bean puree too. And there's a little turmeric, which I like to put in all my soups and stews. It's just healthy. It's good for you. And then I have, of course, the first part of my beans pureed. And I'm just going to mix that right into my roux. And then here's the second half from right out of the blender. It's basically the red beans pureed. And I'm going to mix all this in to the roux as well, and then stir it very, very well until both of the parts are incorporated. And then, as you see, it's starting to take on a more reddened and brown color. The base looks really good. It's nice and thick. It's got a good consistency, but it'll still fall off of the little mixer thing. And that's what I want. I don't want it to be so thick that it's going to, keep everything clumpy, but I do want it to be liquefied. And that right there is looking really, really, really good. Now I'm going to turn my temperature back up on my stove to about 2, because I'm going to reheat all this very, very slowly. Start off by, there's my browned sausage. I'm going to go ahead and pop it all in there. And I'm going to add my vegetables. which also had a little bit of liquid in it. So that's okay too, because that's just going to mix right into that beautiful roux color that I've already got. Get everything I can in there. And I'll start mixing all this together while it heats up. As you can see, as I'm mixing all this, see all how the parts are incorporated right into that creamy texture of the roux, and it's taking on a darkened color. That's that, that red bean color mixing with my roux and slightly brown flour. And right now it just looks like things are going really well. But here comes the really patient part. I'm going to heat this back up without ever letting it bubble, hardly at all. And that's got to be done very carefully, because it's also going to heat my seafood at the same time. Oh, I just took a taste of this, and that sweet vegetable, the pepper, celery, onion taste now incorporated into the roux. This is just really right on the money. Oh, that's good. Now I have added my shrimp and scallops over here in a little wok, and I'm going to heat them up real slow. I'm not really going to cook them all the way. I'm just sort of defrosting them because they were frozen. And I've added a little bit of Old Bay Cajun seasoning to them to give them that little bit of Cajun spice. And I'm going to add them to my roux and let it all heat very slowly with the top on. Okay, and then probably when about 90% cooked, I'm going to go ahead and put my scallops and shrimp on into my roux. I don't want to get too much of that liquid in there, because I don't want to stain it with a seafood taste. I want the seafood to be able to stand alone with the taste of the roux. I have to say, I'm really happy with my roux, the way it came out, and after it mixed with the red bean roux part, it's got the perfect consistency, and now the color of the flour is starting to really brown, and it's just really doing good. I've got the shrimp and the scallops in here, but I'm also going to cook up another 1.5 pounds of larger shrimp over here, and I'm going to pour them in here, and we'll have a finished product. Well, folks, as this has heated to be where it just about wants to bubble, I've added the rest of my shrimp from out of the other pan. So as you can see, it's thick with shrimp and sausage and scallops. We got the vegetables are incorporated in there, but very small. And the roux came out just perfect. It got a nice, deep brown, rich appearance to it. But there we go. There's your finished product right there. That would be red bean based seafood gumbo, old biker dude style. Okay, folks, I appreciate you sticking with me today to watch my red bean based seafood gumbo, and invite you to keep on adding some of those suggestions to the comments. Like and subscribe if you would. Hope you enjoy the home edition version of Old Biker Dude Show. I'll be getting back on the road soon. We'll be back to regular content. But in the meantime, I just thought I'd put these out there because people had asked about home cooking recipes and things like that. But sure enjoyed having you along. See you in the next video.